This is what I learned in the class CMN 4166, Audience Research. I learned that the field of audience research isn't static. This was probably the most important takeaway I had from the course, as it made me reflect on other subject areas I've studied in school. Audience research has changed throughout the ages. In the early 1900s, being an audience member was as straightforward as watching a movie in the theater. There was no two-way communication between media, creator, and consumer. Now, audience members are creators themselves. This is thanks to communication channels like Twitter, where people can talk with other audience members and even become broadcasters. I've also learned that there is no single right way of doing audience research. When it comes to taking notes, for instance, it's important to read over your field notes several times. This is useful for the coding process, but it also draws the researcher's attention to something they may not have noticed in an earlier reading. But this number of times the coding and recoding process takes place isn't prescribed by any audience research Bible. It's up to what the researcher finds fit. This leads to another takeaway from the course. Use several theories to explain something. There's no single theoretical framework that can explain everything. A researcher must choose a few. As Dr. Strangelove told us, a chair can't stand on one leg, so it's best to use several legs or theoretical frameworks to prop up your work. As I mentioned earlier, there is no Bible or instruction manual for audience research that all researchers in the field have come to accept. There is even infighting between researchers who swear by quantitative or qualitative research methods. This lack of consensus in the field left me a little uneasy at first, feeling as though everything in audience research was arbitrary, so how could I ever understand it when professionals don't even see eye to eye? But when we started learning about autoethnography, the field started to make sense. It's about what you find worthwhile studying and making observations on, including even yourself. There are audiences of everything, and different researchers will pick up on different observable traits for those audiences. As long as researchers follow the general process of taking detailed field notes, coding, and analysis, their research is just that, research. They've created something, and hopefully others find it worthwhile to read. In conclusion, I've learned a lot about audience research in this course, especially autoethnography, which up until this semester I had never heard of. But more importantly, I learned that there's a human element to research, subjective interpretation of how to conduct research within the general guiding principles of the field. We're always told that there's more than one way to do anything. But to have this validated in an academic context, which I always thought was quite rigid and full of rules, drove the point home for me. From practicing self-reflection with autoethnography to understanding that using a different approach than the norm is just as valid, more than made up for having a course on Friday evenings this past semester.